Your house is worth whatever it's worth, right? Whoever sells it. Wrong. I'm Charlie. Welcome to Moving Home with Charlie, and thank you for coming.
Charlie Landing grew up in Sussex, is the founder of Best Agent and presenter of Moving Home with Charlie.
If you want to find one of these guys, look out for those compassionate professionals. All estate agents are not the same.
So, Charlie, what would be your advice for people interested in buying new builds right now?
Don't overpay. Do buy, but don't overpay. That's why I say disregard the guff. Read into the numbers and look, and it's buried. The bad news is buried in the small print, okay?
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Property Press Awards.
They may or may not be telling the truth, but you should form your own view. Get out and view, get out and view, get out and view. You cannot be in a position to make offers and have the offers accepted if you're not viewing. So be out there viewing. Pay attention to the back of the class if you've not been watching my videos. I did one just a couple of days ago. Disregard the guff, guys. Alex.
Hello, Charlie.
Is it supply and demand? No, hang on. Wait. No. It's immigration. No, hang on. No. There aren't enough houses. That's what house prices are. No. It's money printing. It's money printing. That's what it is. There we are. We can all go home now.
That's it. Answered. All of the things.
Everyone knows. And in fact, and as our illustrious friend Russell Quirk says, there is no affordability crisis.
No, I mean, I don't know why I don't just go out tomorrow and buy 2 houses.
Yeah, it's cheap, it's easy. Oh, good evening, everybody. This evening's video, I have dragged Stig into a live stream for you.
Do you know what time I went to bed this morning?
Oh, sorry, just get my violin out.
Let me preface this by saying I was working, not drinking. 5:30 in the morning I was working, and then I had to get up and start again at 10. So I am now drinking, because that is the answer to when you've had no sleep.
Okay, well, listen, I hope you hold it together long enough to get the point across for the boys and girls watching this who want to know why house prices are so unaffordable and what's going to make it better or worse. And let's just say there are a lot of factors. It's not any one thing. And the point of this video is that most people have their pet theory, be it immigration, be it supply and demand, be it not enough houses, be it quantitative easing, be it M4 money supply, or any of those things, right? But none of those are very helpful to ordinary folk who just want to understand why. And actually, as I think we're going to hopefully show on this evening's show, the culprit, the elephant in the room, or the one hiding behind the mask, is actually the one we keep voting for.
That's a Scooby-Doo reference. I love that.
Yes. It's actually the mask says immigration and supply and demand, but when you take the mask off,
underneath it's those bastards with the money. Yeah, go on.
Confound you, meddling kids.
Yeah.
For finding out. Okay, so now you said you wanted to start straight away with the interest rate graph.
Right. So what I'm going to start with is the big one that people go on and on about, and it's in the press all the time, is mortgage rates. Mortgage rates, and that sets house prices. You know, if mortgage rates are up, then house prices are down. If mortgage rates are down, then house prices are up. And oh my God, we need to cut interest rates so that you get mortgages. So if you can get that mortgage graph up, the first thing.
I've just realized the one that I had up isn't actually the one we need.
Don't worry, I've got it.
Okay.
Let me just see if I can share this.
So for the boys and girls watching at home, what we're about to show is that whilst changes in interest rates do have some influence on the housing market, both in terms of affordability and activity, they are not the primary driver.
Yeah.
Oh, right. You got it.
Yep.
Hang on a second.
Okay. So when you look at that, at first, it looks a bit scary. It's not. You've basically got 4 colored lines, blue, orange, red, and green. And they are 2-year, 3-year, 5-year fixed rates and a 2-year variable. And that graph goes from 97 through to 25. Now, the first thing, the point behind this graph is that Bank of England interest rates are not what sets in the short term the mortgage rate. And you can see that if you look at 2009, you can see that the interest rate, as we all know, dropped to 0.5%. But mortgage rates stayed much, much higher. That's because mortgages are based on SONIA swap rates, which is the easily pronounced sterling overnight index, which is how large lenders average, which is how large lenders borrow and move money around. And if the market believes that interest rates are going to come back up, which obviously they did in 2009 because 0.5% was unprecedented, they don't drop. Your mortgage rate doesn't drop. So the first thing is, every time you hear a Bank of England announcement, it doesn't necessarily mean that your mortgage rate is going to fall if the interest rate falls. Likewise, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go up if the interest rate goes up, although that is much more likely because they don't like to miss out on that. What you will notice, and this is quite an old graph, this is from February of this year, is that if you look right at the end there, from June of 24 to January of 25, you can see that all of the fixed rates were actually below the Bank of England rate.
Yeah.
Now, that's the first time that's happened. And the reason for that, of course, is because the market believed that interest rates were going to come down. So somebody somewhere has lost quite a lot of money. And I asked the question about 6 months ago, how much longer can they keep putting out mortgages at below Bank of England interest rate? How much longer are those swaps going to be available? And it appears that they've sort of given up on that now, even though the Bank of England rate has now fallen considerably. I think you'll find that mortgage rates did not fall in line with it because they were already lower. So, Bank of England interest rate does not equal mortgage rate.
Thank you. Now, can I pull up the next graph?
Yes, next graph.
Which is the one that Russell couldn't understand. It's this one. This is the correlation between interest rates and house prices.
It's got better. Okay, so the first thing to look at here, that blue line, which you may recognize was the grey line in the previous graph, are Bank of England interest rates. And the green line is the actual land registry sold price index. So these are the actual prices of houses sold in that year. And what you'll notice is that from 95 until 2007, that green line is going up, up, up and away. And the Bank of England interest rates during that time were at somewhere between 4.5% and 6.5%. They were high. And then when the Bank of England interest rate dropped dramatically in 2009, did the green line shoot up because interest rates had gone down? No. But mortgages didn't go down immediately, did they? You just showed us that. No, they didn't, but they did go down. And yet it was not enough.
And I'd also like to point out that if you look at the period between January 2004, which was the trough on the blue line, so the lowest point of the Bank of England interest rate before we got to 2009, it starts to go up there, and house prices are still going up. Even though the base rate's going up, house prices are still going up all the way to 2008. Even though interest rates are going up, 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 house prices keep going up and up and up. So there is not true that increasing interest rates necessarily decreases house prices. Okay, so please don't listen to a word our thick friend Russell Quirk says when it comes to, it's just interest rates. That's all it is. Because that's what he said on that video I was with him on last week. And by the way, for everyone watching wondering what this data is, am I correct, Alex? You are the author of this graph, and that data is pulled directly from the Bank of England, the ONS,
Land Registry, and ONS. Yeah. Now, what should be said? We are not dismissing interest rates as having an impact, because they do.
Yeah.
But they are not the main driver of house prices, as I think this graph shows pretty clearly. What they are is either an accelerant or a suppressant. And by that, what I mean is, if house prices are going up and interest rates drop, and it's really when they get to about 2% that you will suddenly see a lot more people being able to bid more for houses. And conversely, if they get above 6%, not the Bank of England rate, the mortgage rate, if it goes above 6%, it will stop growth and may even turn it negative. But between that range, from about 2% to 6%, it really doesn't have much impact. I mean, yes, individuals will say, well, it impacted me. Yeah, of course. There are individual cases, edge cases all the time. But in general, between 2 and 6%, not much, with 4 being, you know, a happy median where everyone just carries on as if nothing has happened. It's only when it gets to extremes that it really has an impact on the overall direction of house prices.
Okay. Cool. Right. Next thing then. Well, it's just supply and demand. If it's not interest rates, it must be supply and demand, which is just because, you know, population equals supply, right? And sorry, I mean, house building equals supply, population equals demand. It's simple. It's stupid, isn't it? It's just supply and demand.
Can we go back to that graph you literally just had up? Because the reason I say this is immigration did increase dramatically from 98 through to 07. And you go, oh, well, look, it correlates with house prices. Yeah, but it increased just as dramatically from 08 through to 16.
Actually increased after, didn't it? It really opened up after 2010.
And in 2022, it was the highest it had ever been until 23, which was the highest it had ever been, and so on and so forth. And you don't see a massive increase. No. I like to try and take things to extremes to understand them. So if every immigrant who turned up in this country turned up with £1 million in their back pocket, would it increase house prices? You'd think yes. I mean, that makes sense. But the immigration, especially the immigration that everybody goes on and on about, are the people who are coming across to this country, especially post-Brexit, post-2016, are they coming with a lot of money? With the exception of some people from Hong Kong and even some from Ukraine. In general, they're not earning above the average wage in the UK. Therefore, they can't pay any more than the average person. And given the house price multiples, it would be very difficult for them to push up house prices. Now, different story with rent. Yeah, rent, absolutely. But to buy a house until recently, you had to have a deposit, etc., given by the bank of mum and dad and all the rest of these good things, or saved yourself if you were lucky. And a lot of these immigrants just are not in that position. So it's more the rent that they will impact rather than the house price. And then people say, well, what about the Russian oligarchs? You know, they buy these £100 million mansions. That is true.
About 3 of them.
But it's such a tiny number. It's a tiny number. It's 1% of foreign-owned residential properties in this country, roughly. And bear in mind, the housing stock is about 31 million houses across the whole of the UK. And there are approximately 28.5 million households. So we have 2.5 million more houses than we need. But they are in the wrong place. Many of them are derelicts. There are second homes. There are holiday homes. There are things that are being let out for Airbnb, etc., etc. So we don't have a large number of spare homes, but we have more than Germany and we have more than the Netherlands. And people say, yeah, but what about France? What about Spain? What about Italy? Well, do you know what all 3 of those countries have in common? And Portugal. They have a lovely coastline and beaches, and people go there on holiday, and they have ski resorts in France, and so on and so forth. So they have a huge number of empty homes or non-primary household homes. But that is because a lot of Spanish people own a villa in their country on the coast where they go, as do a lot of expats. There aren't an awful lot of expat communities in Devon, for instance.
No. So when people like Russell go, well, it's 700,000 extra people a year coming in. Of course, that's going to put house prices up. Where are they all going to go? I mean, well, houses are multiple occupancy. House HMOs is where a lot of people go. Obviously,
Yeah.
so it's not one house per person, as often that rhetoric likes to imply. You need to build a new house for every new arrival. No, that's not true.
Oh dear. Yeah, there's so much, and this is the problem. There's so much rubbish around this subject.
Yeah.
It's very simple. Should we get to the crux of what actually?
No, because there's another myth we have to bust first, which is, oh, it's just because they're not building enough new houses. That's why house prices are going, because they're just not building enough new houses. They just need to build more.
Well,
That will bring prices down, because the builders will be really happy to bring their prices down if they build more houses, won't they?
If I hear somebody say "build, baby, build" one more fucking time, it's on X. It's every second post. Build, baby, build. It's the most fatuous, inane, stupid, childish gimmick line that is totally unachievable. And it's unachievable because there is no viability or affordability for developers to actually make a profit. So we are currently building the fewest number of houses that we have done in decades. Our planning approvals are almost as low as they were in 2009. And you might recall that was something of an issue, given we just had the GFC, the biggest financial crisis since the Great Depression. And build, baby, build. He needs such a kick in the crutch, that man.
Careful, you're not inciting violence.
I'm not. I want to do it. I'm not inciting it. I'm offering it. No one else kick him in the crutch. That crutch is mine.
But the other point is this, is that even if they were to build, baby, build, in this hypothetical fantasy alternative universe, they think that can happen. It doesn't bring prices down. That's the point.
Well, and also we don't need them. In 20 years' time, we will not need them, because as the baby boomers die out and all these large family homes, with which they have many, are back on the market, given our fertility rate, and given that Labour today made promises about immigration, not that any government has ever promised anything about immigration over the last 20 years. But if we are in any way serious about slowing down, and let me put it this way, we don't need to curb immigration in the near future, because the immigrants are going to take one look at this country and go, why the fuck would I want to move there? So I think we're going to have an issue with emigration, where a lot of our people leave the country, as they did in the 70s.
Right. So not enough homes being built is not the cause of high house prices, is it?
No.
This is the second most popular myth after you can't go wrong with bricks and mortar. House prices only go up. House prices only go up. That's myth number one. And myth number two is house prices are going up because there aren't enough new houses, and that building houses, but affordable ones, build affordable houses, and that solves the problem. And of course, it doesn't. It doesn't solve the problem.
Oh, don't get me started.
Let's not even get started on the affordability side. I know exactly. That's the rabbit hole not to go down. But I just want to again, for people watching this video with an open mind, it is not population or immigration, so it's not supply and demand. It is not that there aren't enough houses. It's not that building new houses solves the problem either. So that how many of the myths we busted? So we've done supply and demand, no. Immigration, no. Immigration definitely hurts rent, but not house prices. Not enough houses have been built, no. And okay, here's the last one we've got to debunk. It's money printing. QE. That's what it is. It's money printing. That's why house prices are going up so much, because money printing.
Okay, so there were two rounds of QE in this country, and they were very different. The first round of QE went directly into banks, and that was from 2009 until about 17. I can't remember when it sort of stopped. But it was a lot of money. It was, what, 475 billion, I think, something like that.
Half a trillion near about, yeah.
Yeah. But the banks didn't lend it. That is why house prices stagnated over that period. We'll get into government interventions in a second. But house prices stagnated over that period. And then we had a second round of effectively QE, call it furlough, call it bounce back loans, call it what you like. And that was over COVID and lasted from about 20 to 22, something like that. That was another
400 billion, wasn't it? Yeah.
Now, not all of that got paid out in furlough and bounce back loans. That covered all of the COVID sort of spending. But a lot of it got put into people's hands. And that absolutely had an impact on inflation. But I would argue that the bigger driver of house prices in that time were government interventions. And this is where we move on to the next graph.
Right. This one. This graph is the smoking gun that proves this point. But as I discovered, there are grown men who can't read graphs.
No.
Not even joking. Not even joking.
Right?
There are grown men who can't read a graph, but they are apparently commentators in the housing market. I mean, no wonder the housing market's so stuffed. Here it is. This is the smoking gun.
Because of those people, let me just explain the x-axis. And for those who are hard of understanding, that is the line at the bottom. And you'll see that it's April 68, February 69, December 69. And people go, oh, well, why have you got these odd months? And guys, we're talking about a period of 57 years, 58 years. I can't fit every month on the graph. You understand?
I need to explain to everyone why you're pointing this out, because I actually had a, quote, property investor on LinkedIn comment on this graph saying, well, you've missed out. You've got a weird selection of months there. You're missing out monthly data every year. What's that all about?
Yeah. Anyway.
Yes,
it's frightening.
We went through each year and we picked out the months that didn't suit the story for us and just left the ones that did. That's right. Yeah, that appeared to be his suggestion.
It was. Whereas when you look at the blue line, you might notice that it goes up and down a lot, even between the data points, because that's every month of data. The important thing is affordability. And what you're seeing here is that from 68 through until December 99, the average multiple of the average salary was 4.6, that green line. And so every time
people's average earnings was the average cost of a house.
Yep.
Okay.
And every time that we see a major peak, so in 73, in 89, that is because of, 73 inflation, but also the relaxation of credit controls, building society support, removal of rent controls. In 89, I think everyone's aware of the whole Myris thing, where it was announced that Myris was going to be reduced back to 30,000 a person, back to one person on the thing, and everyone plowed in to get it. Then there was huge sell-off, and we had possibly the worst housing crash of our lives, Charlie, in terms of people having their houses repossessed.
Yep.
But then you had the mother of all interventions, and that started in about 97.
So, forgive me, can I interrupt you? Can we go back and slow down? I'm going to just spell out a few things for people here because there's a lot going on the screen, right? So this is spanning 55 years or so, thereabouts.
Yeah,
1968. So you started in 1968, and in 1968, that blue line says that the average house price was 4.5 times the average salary. Yeah.
Yep.
So that blue line, when it goes down, it doesn't mean house prices are getting cheaper. It means the number of multiples of the average salary you need to buy a house goes down. Correct. So this is not, the blue line is not house prices. The blue line is the closest line there is to affordability, right? If affordability is measured, and by the way, we must point out at the very end of this graph where it appears to come down, that's excluding tax increases and stuff like that. But so this blue line is going up means it gets less affordable, going down means it gets more affordable, but it is not house prices, right? It's not house prices. It's affordability. And the reason it's not house prices is because if wages are going up with house prices, then house prices aren't getting more unaffordable. True, roughly speaking.
Yeah.
If wages go up at the same speed as house prices go up, then affordability is remaining level.
Yeah.
And this graph is the most compelling and powerful one I've seen. And again, it's all government data, right? This graph, all of it. From
Yes.
Bank
Yeah.
England.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So it's none of Stig's custom-made data. It's just
I've never custom made data. Bloody hell.
exactly. I know, but no. Again, Russell thinks that you make stuff up to suit your story. He doesn't understand the concept of just wanting to know the truth.
He's a very odd man, Russell.
And yeah, so in the middle of the 70s, because there were all kinds of crises there, inflation, the government intervened, and let's just say, so it dropped from 4 times the salary in 1971, right? So house prices were obviously coming down in the early 70s, and it got to 4 times salary was the average house price for the whole country, right? Not for first-time buyers, for the whole country. And then in the space of 4 years, it went from 4 times salary to nearly 6.5 times salary.
And that is because we had the OPEC crisis. You had a massive inflation, which suddenly meant that people's money was worth much less. And then from 74, when all of the state workers, so anyone who was public sector, got a 29% pay rise in 74. And look what happens to affordability at that point. Suddenly, it becomes much more affordable again.
Yeah. Okay. So let's just, so we can see, okay, between the early 70s and the late 90s, there it is. It sort of bimbles along at an average of 4.6 times salary. Yeah. And every time the government intervenes, they make it worse. And every time they leave it alone, it gets a bit better.
Yes. And let's be very clear. Those 2 massive peaks that you see there, those sharp peaks, one caused by inflation, both caused by inflation and then ensuing interest rate rises and then wage increases. So that's what made it go up and down. Now you can start on 97.
Right. So in 1997, which is where that red line starts, that dotted red line, which is, I mean, it's quite clearly, looking at the last 55 years, a step change, isn't it?
Yep.
Between 1997 and 2007, so that 10 years, is a step change where affordability, which had been oscillating around 4.5 times for 25 years, suddenly went up in pretty much a straight line, up to over 7.5 times earnings, and stayed there until now. Again, just averaging it out, right? So we jumped from 4.5 times earnings before the 90s to 7.5 times earnings after 2000. After that. And so, do you want to just go through slowly, item by item, what happened in the 90s that caused this to happen, so people get, because we haven't actually spelt out what the cause of high house prices is yet.
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing was, in that time period, unlike the early 70s and the late 80s, there was not massive inflation and there were not huge interest rates. Interest rates were fairly stable, between sort of 6 and 4 and 5%. They sat around that mark, which historically was not too far above average. What there was good wage growth, and therefore people could afford higher mortgages. But if you went back to the 80s and 90s, number one, there were less people buying in couples. Women had been in the workforce for decades, obviously, but even into the early 80s, they still were not massive house buyers, even as joint mortgage holders. And in fact, they'd only been allowed to get mortgages, I think, in the 70s was when that started. But so they joined. So suddenly you've doubled up your purchasing power by having 2 of you. But at the same time, the banks went, well, look, we can take advantage of all this extra purchasing power. And there was a real relaxation of lending criteria. It got to the point where you could self-certify. So if you had your own business, you just walk in and go, yeah, I can afford this much. And the banks were just throwing money at you. They were throwing money, and there was a home buy scheme, a shared ownership scheme, Also, buy-to-let kicked off in '96, I think. There was also a huge push by the government, old Tony Blair and Brown, on television, in newspapers, telling people it was Thatcher continued, and telling people they should buy their own home. However, they didn't say you should buy your own home with money that you saved. And so when the banks went, we'll lend it to you, 125% loan to value, because we know your house is going to go up in value, people took it. And this is what happened. Suddenly, in about 2004, any right-thinking person started scratching their head and going, do you know what? Affordability has never been this bad. We're now at 6.5 times. That's worse than when we had 15, 18% interest rates. That's worse than in the peak of inflation. Interest rates are only 6%. Why is it so unaffordable to buy anywhere? Well, that's because the banks just kept pumping out the money. And if you couldn't afford your loan over 20 years, and it wasn't 25, the historical average back in the 60s was 20 years. If you couldn't afford it over 25, they could make it 28 and interest only. And it's still endowment mortgages were being sold. And so you had this push, which once we got there, and then interest rates collapsed and we had the financial crisis, you would think when interest rates collapsed to 0.5%, the house prices would keep chomping on up. But no, because we had 8.5% unemployment. And banks, even though they just received 475 billion of QE, weren't willing to lend it. And if banks don't lend, house prices stay flat. And you see that between 09 and 13. They basically flatlined. They didn't drop because, they did drop, but they didn't drop back to the old affordability levels because sellers just didn't want to sell. And unlike the early 90s, banks were not as kind as they are now, but were much kinder about forbearance and allowing you to miss payments. They didn't automatically snatch your house and repossess. And so people staggered along until, yet again, more government intervention. But unlike the last interventions where you saw those massive sharp rises, now all the intervention did was help that blue line struggle back up above the 7.9 times average in about 2014. And that coincided with wages slowly beginning to pick up again because they had stagnated. Well, they'd fallen and then stagnated. And we'll get onto that at the end.
So let me cut to the chase now for all people who were watching this going, okay, so what is it then? What actually is the smoking gun? What is it that causes it? I'm just going to hide that for a second. And I'm going to just say what it is, what you've been explaining to me for some time that it is, and be very precise about it. Mortgages themselves aren't the problem, are they?
No, there's nothing wrong with having a mortgage.
Nothing wrong with having a mortgage. And mortgages at low interest rates in themselves aren't the problem, are they?
No.
No. It just means that your mortgage payment's lower. But the way I like to imagine this point that we want to make is imagining physical buyers standing at a house, and each one of them has got a briefcase, and in it they've got the briefcase of money that they're bidding on that house. Okay, and let's just say there are a handful of people there, right? Five people stand there with suitcases of money, and the first two have got cash, their own cash. They haven't borrowed it from anywhere. It's just cash, and that's what they're bidding with. Okay, and in the olden days, when you could only borrow, let's say, just keep round numbers, 4 times your salary.
4 times one salary.
Yeah, 4 times one salary. The people with the other, like 2 of them there would have had an amount of money in their suitcase, which was 4 times their salary plus the bit of deposit they saved up. Now, that was the case because those were the limits imposed on lenders, weren't they? right?
Yep.
By the government. The government imposed limits on lending were 4 times one salary. We're simplifying here, right? We're simplifying to make the point, right? And then along comes someone from the future where the government has released these limitations. And this person who earns the same amount of money as the other guys that are there, he's got 6 times his salary in his suitcase to bid on that house. He doesn't have any more money. He doesn't earn any more money. He hasn't saved any more money. He's just suddenly got a very substantial extra amount of money with which to buy that house.
But Charlie, but Charlie, how does he eat? I mean, at 6 times his salary, there's no way he could pay that back in 25 years and still have any money left over. I don't know how he survives.
Well, that's because the repayments are the same as the guys in 4 years because they've extended the mortgage term. And it's no longer 25 years, it can now be up to 40 years. So by the government allowing lenders to lend bigger multiples of not just one person, but 2 people's salary, and for longer periods of time, every time they do that, they are stuffing hundreds of thousands of pounds more into the briefcases, the suitcases of these guys bidding on houses.
Yeah.
And that, above all other factors we've discussed, is what drives house prices up faster than wages or anything else, right?
Yes.
And yet, and this is why I thought it was ironic to see the relatively new boss of Skipton Building Society, who's a major lender, right? Doing a story last week going, I'm really shocked to realize how unaffordable homes are.
Are you sure you're in the right job?
It was like, I mean, light dawns on Marblehead, it was and he appeared, it appeared sincere, but his apparent answer was, we need to be able to lend more money to first-time buyers to help them combat.
Well,
and this, round the roundabout we go.
And this is so Richard Donnell at Zoopla, who we both, you've had on your show, we've both been on at the same time, is a really good guy. And they've just done a really good piece of research at Zoopla explaining why it is unaffordable to build in most of the UK. 68%, I think, of the UK, it's unaffordable to build new homes, or very difficult. And in 24% or whatever, it's absolutely unaffordable. And one of the major causes for that is, of course, land values, which have gone up even faster than house prices over the course of the last sort of 40 years. And even Richard, who does this great analysis, one of his solutions was, we need to have a help to buy scheme to help first-time buyers back in the market. You're like, mate, you're not getting it. The whole reason that land prices went up, because land used to be relatively cheap in this country, and then people go back to immigration, all that. No, we have a lot of land in this country, plenty of land. It used to be relatively cheap, and suddenly it's very expensive. And you go, well, why is it so expensive? For a new build at the moment, an average new build, land is somewhere between 25 and 35% of the cost of your new build is the land. Which is why everyone wants to build horrible looking tower blocks, because you get an awful lot more properties on the same amount of land. And it's why we don't get nice Victorian terraces anymore with 3 bedrooms, all that sort of good stuff, because you can't afford it because of the land. But why is the land expensive? The land is expensive because as individuals, we all took the biggest mortgages we could, which meant we could pay more for the product, which meant that the builders went, well, do you know what? We don't need to pay only 2 million for that plot of land. We can afford to pay 5 million for it because the houses are so much more expensive. And just like house prices, once the price has gone up, it's very hard to unwind it because nobody who owns that land now wants to sell it at a loss. So what do the big developers do? They land bank it. They will just leave it there without any houses on it until such time as it becomes affordable to build on it. And it all comes back to us, I'm afraid, don't get me wrong, banks are the enablers, they are the drug dealers. But at the end of the day, it is our choice whether we take the drug or not. If the entire nation got together, and I know this is ludicrous and will never happen, but if we all got together and said, you know what, I will never spend more than 35% of my net salary on a mortgage payment, house prices would come down. But that's not what we do, because we want the house.
I have to say, I'm heartened at what appears to be a bit more stubbornness on the part of buyers to not overpay. I mean, look, new build sales in London flats in London have collapsed almost completely.
Yep.
And despite the government loosening lending criteria in the last few years, and despite strong wage growth, house prices have not, even at the first time buy level, have not gone up. They haven't kept up with wages.
No.
They have not gone up strongly at all. So, I'm sensing that first time buyers for the first time are beginning to get a bit more savvy and a bit more careful, and a bit more, hang on a second, it's not the surefire winner that we were told it used to be, that we used to be told it was, and are being more careful. And of course, not only that, but whatever multiple of your salary you're being offered, you've still got to work out what your actual take-home budget is and your disposable income. And that's being eaten up every single year by fiscal drag, not raising income tax thresholds, and all of our energy and just cost of living increases that are going up that are not factored into this. So, whilst that house price to affordability graph that you did shows that it's improved slightly in the last couple of years, that's before tax, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. A really simplistic way of looking at the timeline is housing was, up until the 1920s, 30s, even later into the Second World War, we were a country of renters. There were big landlords and there were places you could rent. But the places you could rent were things like those lovely 3-bed Victorian terraces that people now aspire to in Fulham, that used to be for policemen and postmen and nurses, and now cost £1.4 million. And so we were a nation of renters, and then we became a nation of homeowners. At peak, we got 71% of households were under home ownership. That's fallen to about 62%, so it's come down by about 9%. And I love the way Russell went, well, it hasn't come down much. 9% of 28.4 million households is about 2.5 million households. That's quite a lot of people, given there's over 2.3 in each household. You're talking about 5 million people additionally now renting rather than being in an owned household. But anyway, ignoring Russell in that, the first set of house price rises were because, ignoring government intervention, were because salaries increased. The next set were because people started buying with their partners, so that you had two purchases. And at this point, the average age of the first-time buyer was still about 23. And the standard mortgage was, if there were two of you, 3 times one person's salary and 1.5 times the other person's salary. And this wasn't just regulated by the government, it was regulated by the building societies, because they thought it was good for the population. They were less risk, they were quite risk averse. And so that was how it worked. So initially, salaries increased, house prices increased. Then additional person on the mortgage, house prices increased. And what then happened is lenders started to lend more money. House prices increased, but they increased because this was artificial. It wasn't actually due to your wages, which if wages drop, house prices still fall. What it meant was that people then bought later. And so rather than buying at 23, they said, oh, well, we've got to save a deposit. But actually what the impact of that is, if you're not buying at 23, you're buying at 34, your salary at 34 is higher than it is at 23. Mm-hmm. So by the time you get to buy, you're now increasing house prices again because you've got a higher salary in the first fucking place because you are 11 years older. Yeah. So we're making it just gets worse and worse. And then lenders go, oh, well, it's still becoming unaffordable. We'll extend the terms. So, now it's 40 years. You sit there and you go, oh, hang on. This used to be wonderful. Home ownership used to be a wonderful thing. Now it's a fucking millstone.
It reminds me of an addict going to their dealer going, could I just have one more? One more extension, please. Could you just give me one more hit?
Yeah.
Just because I'm coming down and it's coming down, and I need to go back up again. I just one more hit of lending extension, please. Oh,
Oh, it's frightening.
it really is frightening. So, just to wrap this up, a couple of comments coming, I think, quite fun to talk about. Everyone should know, right? Whatever your position on the political spectrum, whatever your position on the economic spectrum, everybody should know that when lenders and or the government allow us to borrow larger multiples of our salary and or for longer periods of time, that makes affordability worse for the next people coming along behind us to buy homes.
Yeah.
In other words, our kids.
Which is why I think you and I both agree that nobody wants to see a massive crash. Sorry, a lot of people would like to see it in a kind of smiley pointed at it sort of way, but it would be horrific for society for there to be a massive house price crash. It was in the 90s. It wasn't so bad in 08, 09 because of all the interventions, but still not pretty. And there are lots of people who are suffering still to this day from being trapped in variable rate mortgages. But if we just started with the simple measure of paring back terms, so no more 40-year terms, let's bring it back. Let's bring it back and bring it back until we get to about 30 years as a maximum, which allows for the fact that we live longer. Although it doesn't help us with fertility rates if people are still waiting until they're 34 to buy. But okay, let's go with 30. And then we can slowly pare back lending multiples so that rather than an average of 4.5 times or 4.7 times, I think it is now, and a max of 6, you just slowly bring it down and down. And there will be people screaming, saying, what if I bought in the last few years? I will have lost money. I'll be trapped in my home. Yeah, I'm afraid anything to unwind this is going to hurt some people. But the problem is, having done all the maths on this, I think it takes somewhere between 13 and 20 years to get back to a reasonable place without crashing the market.
And the reason it's worth getting back to that reasonable place where, young working people could afford to buy a house is because then they're more likely to have families, the birth rate might increase again, and they'll have more disposable income to spend in the local economy, and there'll be prosperity.
Absolutely.
So you have rising birth rate and prosperity, and you do not allow the government to start extending lending multiples again. Ever. Because it just sucks money out of the economy and it sucks the birth rate down. And it's just horrible. Right.
Yes, it turns us into the stagnant, unproductive country that we are, because all of our liquid is illiquid in a house.
Did you see today, London has now slipped below Mexico as in terms of the world's most favorite place for companies to do IPOs.
Oh, we are fucked. Anyway.
Right. Glenn Watson says, Stig, will there be a correctional crash and should we buy more wine?
Always buy more wine. It's very important. I can't see the price of wine going down anytime soon on the basis that those fuckers will tax anything they can lay their hands on.
I think just on this point, because it is a lot of people are worried about whether you're hoping there's a crash or whether you're really hoping that there isn't one. Our friend Fred Harrison, the economist, has been saying for a long time that 2026 is when that happens, and he did a long video explaining why very recently. There's a fascinating video, and he cites AI as one of the factors in it. Mm-hmm. When you look at the economy, you look at the jobs market, it's just I can't remember it being this bleak since I've been an adult. Like, it might have been this bleak, and I know that somehow everything looks and feels okay in some places, kind of.
Yeah.
But actually, below the surface, you can see and you can tell it's not okay. And there are a lot of people very, very quietly sitting at home looking for jobs, feeling absolutely desperate and not, it's not being talked about how many people are being laid off, how many. And in fact, actually, the drip of economic news and unemployment news has almost become routine over the last couple of years now. Like, you've kind of become what's desensitized to thousands of job losses. Oh, it's another 10,000 job losses. Oh, it's another, but that's a town. 10,000 job losses. That's a small town. It's awful, and we've had 150,000 job losses since this government came in on PAYE. That's the net. The net reduction in PAYE jobs after all the new ones that they've created. Can you imagine? Let's sneeze. Imagine how bad it would be if they hadn't been doing that. And we've still got inflation not coming down, and we've still got interest rates not coming down anywhere near where people want them to, but actually they're probably at a healthy level. It's just ugly, but it's slow motion ugly, isn't it?
Yeah, it's much slower than I thought it would be. We did that walk along Putney High Street, nearly 2 years ago now? Must be. And I said it looked exactly like 2007. I think we counted 20 empty shops. And Richmond looks like that now. Richmond. If Richmond is going downhill, it's fucked. The only place around here that is still reasonable is Wimbledon Village. But in 2007, when Richmond looked as it does now, you went, oh shit. And then in 2008, it all went bang. But it's looked like that for a year and a half now. It is very slow this time round.
It's the sort of the new normal. I've just put the link to that video in the live chat. The link to the video of you and me walking around Putney.
Was that 2 years ago?
Yes, it was.
Time just disappears now. That's because we old.
Yes. Stop counting birthdays, don't you? Clement Moraski says lenders rolling dice on people getting brain transplants into robot bodies to keep working to pay off their 150-year mortgages.
Yeah, hey, I love that thing. That's what I've been looking at, is the shift of consciousness into an android. I think it's the way forwards. But it makes me laugh that you get these commentators on X who sit there and they go, well, of course, mortgage terms should be 40 years because we live so much longer now and you can keep working till you're 70. And it's like, I bet that you are 25 years old, because I'm only 53 and I really don't feel quite as energetic as I used to. And by the time I'm 70, if anyone will employ me, which, let's face it, ageism does exist, I don't think I'll be putting in quite the number of hours. I won't be working till 5:30 in the fucking morning like I was today. So this whole idea that, oh, well, you can just extend things because people will just work until they're 70. If you were a manual laborer, you think you'll still be working in your 70s. If you were a house builder, I don't think so.
Yeah. Oh, no.
What's
Greg.
that?
Sorry to hear that. Redundant as of tomorrow. Work in IT. My job has been outsourced to India.
Oh, best of luck, Greg.
Dan says, my company's had a big shake-up, mandatory people back to work, and then big changes where a lot of heads of department are gone. Square Eyes, my job was outsourced to AI.
Yeah.
Sorry to hear that, Square Eyes. Can you let us know what kind of job it was, if you want to? But yeah, it's just brutal, and this is it's underreported. It is massively underreported.
It is. Well, I've got an interesting telephone conversation tomorrow morning, Charlie. So I might have some more time to be working with you.
Oh, mate, good luck.
I quite like Jason's response about high streets. High streets are booming. 8 barber shops, 4 betting shops, and a partridge in a pear tree. You forgot the charity shops, mate, but yes, exactly that.
Spanish Chicken says, I'm a plumber. Back and knees fecked already, for fuck's sake.
I mean, you can't do manual labor past. I mean, I've seen a few guys my age on building sites, but nobody past 60.
Yeah. It's just so going back to the original question about whether or not we think it's going to be. It's a slide. It's a slower slide than we were expecting, but it's a definite slide, and it's continuing to slide. And right now, I don't know whether the government are just careless or don't care that teasing budget ideas actually makes everyone just stop what they're doing. It just, so many people have put their plans on hold. Businesses, home movers put their plans on hold. So, you know, I get a steady stream of inquiries from people watching this channel who want to talk to mortgage brokers, talk to the mortgage brokers I work with. It's a noticeable, very noticeable reduction in that. People, you know, and genuinely, people go, "What should we buy or not buy because of the budget? Should we wait or not wait?" Truthfully, I don't know.
No, who knows?
I don't know, because it depends whether you're a first-time buyer or a second buyer, whether you're above or below $500,000. It depends whether they decide to put a property tax in or not. It depends whether they decide to change stamp duty or not. It depends on so many things. It's impossible to predict. And even if they do the things that have been suggested and predicted, it affects everybody differently. And so there are people thinking, I know that there are people right now thinking, well, if houses above $500,000 might get cheaper because of a budget measure, I'll wait. Well, they're not going to get cheaper for no reason. If they get cheaper, it's because they're going to have a new tax to pay on them.
Exactly.
And I don't know whether or not, for example, I don't know what's going to happen, but it might be the case that if you already owned your home before the budget and you bought it, then you're not liable.
You won't be liable for the tax.
And so actually waiting means you're going to be liable for the tax. You know, it's like, these are all what ifs. I don't know what's going to happen, but you know, this is why I say it's about the move, not the money. And if you want to move house, there's no point in waiting, because it's just, all you're doing is delaying moving on with your life for no particular reason, right? You're not delaying because you know there's a benefit to it. You're going, oh, I'm just going to press pause because I don't know what's going to happen. And I just don't think, yes, there'll be some winners and some losers. I'm sure there will. But getting on with your life and moving, I would not be holding back if I was just, like, there are sellers. Lots of sellers have stopped putting the houses on the market in the last month, according to the Zoopla report.
Right.
And the buyer numbers, the buyer inquiries have dropped for the first time. They're lower than this time last year. And all of this kills activity, kills liquidity, kills social mobility. It's just, and there was a report out today that we're now spending more. We're spending, I think it's up from 10.6 to 10.9% of our disposable income. We're now squirreling away.
We're saving more, not spending more.
We're saving more because we're terrified of what's coming.
Yeah, well, that is a natural reaction before we have one of these crashes, is people suddenly start paying down credit cards and stuffing stuff, but they only stuff it into cash ISAs because A, the UK public is scared of shares and stocks. B, they don't feel that they've got enough to squirrel away to make it worth their while for the fees to buy stocks and shares. And so the cash ISAs are pretty unproductive. Yes, tax effective, but Rachel's clamping down on them anyway.
We've got to wrap it up soon, but just before we do, there's something I want to say, and I need to say this on every single video, because after every single video, I still got people asking me this question. And it's related to Rubabinho's comment here, which I'll come on to in a minute, right? But there are people saying, oh, I need prices to come down. I need prices to come down. I need prices before I buy. I'm not going to buy till prices come down. And then they say, people, oh, look, there's all this stuff on the market not selling. It's too expensive. It's too expensive. Get out and view it. Go and view them. If they've been on the market a long time, there are sellers there. And I know because I have these sellers contacting me saying, I'm really worried because I'm getting no viewings. My agents told me to keep it at the same price. I mean, I just want to find these agents who are saying these things. You should.
Do you want to kick them in the crotch, mate?
You should fire yourself if you're an agent saying to a client whose property isn't selling, no, keep it at the same price. You should fire yourself in shame and disgrace, right? Because the point is to buyers, right? There are sellers out there who've got nobody viewing their house, and they're just sitting there like rabbits in the headlights, not lowering their price. But if you go and view and make a real bona fide offer, a good faith offer, many of them will say no, some of them will say yes. And that's why it's worth going out and viewing the 10 who are going to turn you down in order to find the one who goes, yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah.
Just don't wait. And you're all waiting. You're all ignoring my advice. right? Now is a great time to snaffle a bargain because no one's out there viewing, right? Get out there and view. You don't have to bet on anything. And sellers, this is now, let's just answer Rubabinho's point here. People will refuse to sell at a loss. Well, the people who can refuse to sell at a loss are in a luxurious position, right? They have the choice. They can decide to stay put in the house they're trying to downsize from.
But if you've got a probate house, or if you have a job move that you need because you've been made redundant and have to move somewhere else in the country, or if you have more children and it turns out that they're twins, or you get divorced, there are 1,000 different reasons why you can't just refuse to sell, especially if you can't afford to pay your mortgage.
And refusing to sell, I mean, it's like these people who put their classic car into an auction, like a top-end, exotic, beautiful classic car, 6-figure stuff. The fact they put it in the auction means they obviously want to sell it. They don't want the car anymore. They don't want the space it's taking up. They don't want the maintenance costs, whatever. They need the money, whatever, right? But they put it into the auction and they put it in with a reserve. What's the point of putting it in an auction with a reserve? Did you want... So what? Okay, so it didn't make your reserve. So now what? Now you've what's going to happen now? Do you think it's going to go back up in price? Just sell it and move on. Okay, I really, really despair for all the sellers who are just sitting there, wondering why it's not selling, hanging on and waiting and thinking. And I know that there will be agents out there saying to sellers, "Oh, look, it's just gone a bit quiet because the budget. So just hang on in there, and it should come back in December. And if not December, there's the Boxing Day bounce and the new year. Just hold on.
It's the Boxing Day bounce." Charlie, yes. Just before you, there's a beautiful comment from Greg, which came in at 8:58.
Hang on, wait.
And it is basically, it is the reason that CBDCs will be accepted in this country.
Well, let's read this question out. Let's read it. Greg says, here's an idea. Why couldn't we have a public independent people's bank that can lend mortgages while banning private banks from lending, with profits going into social housing or general taxation?
Central Bank, Bank of England, CBDC. I'm sure Greg had his tongue in his cheek as he typed that out. But yes, give me convenience or give me death.
I listened to that whole album thanks to you putting that link up there the other day.
But it makes perfect sense. If the Bank of England lends, first of all of the affordability checks won't exist because they know how much, because your pay comes through them or all your tax goes through them. So you will have guaranteed amounts. Not only that, they can set the parameters for the multiples that you can have, and any interest that is made or paid by you can then be spent on infrastructure projects in the UK. It's win-win-win. Why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah. And digital IDs are just a first step precursor, right?
Correct. And then, because they're going to help, bear in mind, digital IDs will stop people in boats because Deliveroo won't hire them. Yep. And then the next,
you're being ironic. Let's just point that out
a little. And then the next point will be, well, it would stop them as long as we get rid of cash. If we just get rid of cash, then they'll have to get paid electronically, and because it's a CBDC, that will only happen if they have a digital ID. So you see, we have to get rid of cash. It's the only option. Dun, dun, dun.
You are joking, of course, right? Because there'll be new followers.
I think that's exactly how it will go, and that's how we will end up with CBDCs.
But that's what you think should happen.
No, it's not what I think should happen. It's what I think will happen.
That's right. Yeah. That's the important distinction I was trying to make. Right. Okay, we could keep going. I love it. We've got a really big audience, and I hate to leave you all hanging and wanting more, but I'm afraid that's the way it's got to go.
Always leave them wanting more, Charlie.
Yes, absolutely.
I haven't been able to do that since I was 25, but there we go.
Guys, make sure if you don't get it, if you'd like to get my weekly newsletter, join the mailing list at that URL there, mhwc.co.uk/newsletter. I'd like to make a shout out to Neil, who came up to me in a cafe in Somerset a couple of days ago and said, "You Charlie Landon?" And he just talked to me about his daughter's had bought a house because of this channel, and he watches us and loves these conversations. So Neil, if you're watching, thanks for saying hi, and all the best. And to the rest of you, sod off.
And get viewing.
let's just finish up, right? Houses are unaffordable because of lending multiples being increased. So don't let them increase lending multiples, or your children won't be able to afford houses. And
Or
on
at the very
bombshell-
least, don't take the 40-year option because it means you can get 10 grand more, because you're paying through the nose for it.
Oh, you did an amazing graph on that once. Do you remember that
Yeah,
graph?
I mean,
All of the
the
lending curve?
increase from 25 years to 30 years is actually quite beneficial. From 30 to 35, much less so. From 35 to 40, it's just a fucking daylight robbery. I mean, it's madness. Anyway.
Yeah. Right, guys. Well, listen, Alex, thank you very much yet again for your pearls of wisdom.
Pleasure, Charlie.
And your potty mouth.
It's never going to change.
And to everyone else, I will have Stig back just as soon as I can manage, because I know you will love him, as do I. Stay safe. Remember, go out and buy a home, but just don't overpay. And if you're selling, don't overprice. And if you're new, go and watch my videos, Charlie's 10 Golden Rules of Buying or Selling. That's the best place to start. Have a fantastic evening, guys. See
Have
you
a good one, guys. Cheers.